So today I wanted to talk about all of the books that I love so much that everyone else is just wrong when they have critiques, which is obviously hyperbole. That's not true. Not every book's for everyone, etc., etc. But these are my babies. These are the books that I know when people say they didn't like X, Y, or Z, that's valid. But internally, I'm like, no, everyone's wrong. I cannot engage with this conversation. I love this piece of media too much to have a productive conversation, sort of thing. I feel like we all have those things in all parts of life in media, but for me specifically, we're going to talk about some of the books. I just, over time, started just adding books to this list because it kept happening where I'd be on a Discord or I'd be watching one of my friends' videos and then they'd start saying things, less than perfect things, about my favorite books. And I'm like, I don't like this. I do not. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The books that are my babies. No one can touch them. Everyone's wrong if they say anything, although we all know that I know they're not wrong, right? So the first one, if you know me in the Discords or if you've been on my channel for a while, this is not a surprise. This is the hottest take that I have, and that is Elantris is my favorite book in the Cosmere. Now, do I think it's objectively the best? No. But I have so much nostalgia wrapped up in this book. I read this book in 2005. I read this book when it came out. There were no other Sandersons. The idea of a magic system had not been introduced to me yet. The mystery of it, I've never met those characters before. Like now, looking back, you can see a lot of Sanderson's characters grow from these characters. Like there's a lot in hindsight you can see with Elantris. But when I first read Elantris as 2005, I would have been 13 or 14. I was blown away. And I loved it so much. It was so cozy. There's this huge mystery in that book that when that mystery was revealed, I had never been surprised by a book before. Sanderson was for the longest time the only author who could surprise me. And so it's a combination of all those things. There's also this character called Serene, who I loved, and she was the first character, adult female character on Page, who I was like, oh man, I really like her. I would like to try to aspire to be like her, because, I was 13 or 14. So if you haven't heard what Elantris is about, because even though it's the lesser talked about Cosmere, I feel like everything about the Cosmere is talked about on the internet. But this is a city that used to be this shining beacon of knowledge and prosperity. There were magical powers. The beings who were blessed with these powers could live for very long periods of time. And then one day, this gift, because you would just wake up and suddenly be chosen to be a part of Elantris. Elantrians weren't born, they were made by this gift. And then one day, people wake up and they're now kind of more these decrepit, zombie things, and the magic is gone or not working properly. So that's the world's global setup. It's kind of what you get in the prologue. And we follow three characters who are around this situation. Serene, who is coming to this area to marry a prince, who is our other character, who basically wakes up with this now curse, so they have to play it off like he's dead. So she comes to a town already married to this man because of how politics work, and finds her husband's dead when really her husband is in Elantris. And then we have this priest who is coming to try and save these people from themselves and convert them to his religion, or else he knows his country who follows that religion is going to come and conquer this land. So you follow these three perspectives. And I really love this book. I've read it 4 times. Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative bought me a copy, and it's on my shelf over here, and I cannot wait to reread it because even though it's one of my favorite Cosmere books, I had only ever owned the leather hardback, and those are just harder to read from while also thinking about not ruining them, The same person who bought me the copy of Elantris, Leslie, does not like this book. Gives it 3 stars, thought it was a slog. I know several people who say don't start with Elantris in the Cosmere because, in their opinion, if they'd started there, they'd never keep going. I know so many people who don't like this book, and I just can't. It's one of my favorite things. And, my other favorite Cosmere books are, the traditional Words of Radiance. I love the whole Mistborn trilogy. I don't dislike a Cosmere book. But when I think of what made me suddenly be oh, I am an adult fantasy reader, was Elantris, and it still holds up for me. I think I reread it recently 4 years ago. It's not I haven't read it since I was 15. I really, really love this story. And I do know it actually has some faults in character representation, so those I actually don't ignore. For example, there is an autistic child, and they're not portrayed very well. But in terms of just my enjoyment of the material, it's one of my favorite things. So when I see the internet be so mean to it, I just get so sad. But I do actually show up in almost every Discord conversation where Elantris is talked about and just be like, it's my child. I know it's average, but like I love it so much, like so much, which is why I just get sad when people tell other people to skip it. It just the book deserves a little better. Another one where I instantly loved it, and then I started hearing like the critiques. And this one's not so much that I actually get upset, it's just that everyone's critique is part of why I like the book, and that's The Sword of Kaigen. This is a self-published, really popular self-published book on the bookish internet, where we're in this kind of peninsula, and this area kind of still acts like it doesn't have a lot of technology, but the area itself is pretty modern, and we follow a mother and their son who are part of this dynasty of people who have these water-bending powers, and we watch this son who's 14 grow up and learn more about the area, and this mother kind of deal with her role in society that she does choose to take on, even though you know that her past was very different than this subservient, docile role she's in now. And it's one of the best things I have read in the past couple years. I felt so many emotions. It's a big thing for me when I feel so many emotions. Some people say it's info dumpy. I do like an info dump. There is a classic school scene where Mamoru is being taught history, and a lot of people don't like that scene. But like, when I read that scene, I knew I shouldn't be paying attention to it, because I knew like I was basically being Mamoru. I was not paying attention. Like that's how the scene was written. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was actually really organic, because then in the following scene, you actually learn what you need to through a more organic conversation with Misaki and her friends. So I really liked that. A lot of people hated that. Like a lot of people. I really like the modern qualities we see, especially when we go into Misaki's past and what she used to do in like the equivalent of college. I know Alan does not like that part. He does not like the part where I think he terms it as a CW TV show. I thought that was so cool. A lot of people don't like the last chapter. I needed that last chapter. I was a wreck, and that last chapter made me laugh, made me feel good. So everything that people critique about The Sword of Kaigen, I'm like, but that's why I love the book. That's why I love this story, and these are actually all parts of in the moment while reading it, because a lot of people didn't have reviews out yet when I read it. These were moments that in my head were like, this is a positive. So that's a story that like whenever people critique it, I'm just like, I hear you, but that's also why I love it. So don't know what to do with that. Next one's a new one on this list, and that's the Live Ship Trader series by Robin Hobb. Freaking love this book. I just bought these really old, nice hardback US editions. Really hard to find because the series itself is now like 20 some years old. And so the hardbacks have been out of print for a while. I love it. I love it so much. Now, I don't actually see too many critiques about it other than character connection, which I do think's like a thing that I'm very used to ignoring. Like if someone says they don't like a book because they didn't really like the character work of one of my favorite characters, I just know that's just like a difference of connection. And I think that's what would happen with Live Ship. I think I say in my review that for me it's a five-star series, but if I didn't care about the characters, it would have probably been a 4-star series. So still incredibly good. But it's the character connection, and it's the being invested in the characters' lives and drama and stresses that make me love it so much. So when I do see like meh reviews, it's normally the reason, so I don't like actually get like upset. But the Live Ship Trader series is the closest to perfect I've gotten. I have like one little quibble in Ship of Destiny that I talk about in like my spoiler chat. But even with that, like it could be argued that that's not actually a thing that bothers me. Like I go back and forth. I, again, kind of like The Sword of Kaigen, never had so many emotions as I had while I read these books. This is a story about primarily the Vestrit family in what is called Bingtown. And this area itself has its own personality, and we're watching them go through this transition in family life where one of the members passes away, so there's a transfer of inheritance, and drama starts from there. There's also kind of this implication of this otherworldly transition happening. It's so good. I have all the videos about this series, so I highly recommend it. Robin Hobb is a well-loved author, but I feel like no one shouts about this series enough. And if you don't believe me, if you think because you're on the bookish internet that this is wrong, I agree. I do actually hear about it a bit here. But go on Goodreads. This series has less ratings than the Tawny Man series, which is the 3rd series in Realm of the Elderling. Okay? So, like, people skip this in the real world all the time, and it makes me so sad. All right, next up is The Mask of Mirrors, which I cannot wait for The Liar's Knot. That's a sequel coming out in a few months. This is one of the first books I read this year, the first arc I ever read. I have a review for it. I actually, have my own physical copy. I love this book. In particular, my opinion is Vargo is amazing. There's a character named Vargo. He's very much an out-for-himself businessman, which I guess makes him not a traditional hero, but I think sometimes people then imply he's a villain, and I don't think he's a villain. I think he makes mistakes, and he's not like the best friend in the world, but I love Vargo. I don't know, I just really like The Mask of Mirrors, and this is similar to Sword of Kaigen and stuff. When people have critiques, they'll say it had a pretty slow beginning. I could not put it down at the beginning, so I don't know what makes something really engaging for me or not at the beginning of a book, but it happens more often than not that if someone says a book has a slow start, I am eating that up. Because, you're just watching these characters interact. There's a lot of ballroom politics, because basically you're following a long con. Maybe not a long con, but we have our character Ren, who's trying to basically trick this family into thinking she's a long-lost relative so she can have, some of the money. That's the premise at the start of the book. And then there's cool, like, tarot card magic and dream magic, and, like, things are happening. There's this masked Avenger that you spend the whole book, like, guessing who he is, and it's so fun. It is such a fun time. I cannot wait to cuddle up on my couch this fall with my blanket and reread The Mask of Mirrors. Now, luckily, I don't hear too many negative reviews because it's a new book and not many people talk about it. I basically just tell all of my friends to read it over and over again. So, cannot wait for the sequel. This is for sure one of my newest book babies, this and Live Ship. They're like 2021 fresh. The next one is Exhalation by Ted Chiang, my favorite short story collection, period. It's the short story collection that makes me like short stories. These are really great, thinky sci-fi stories where he sets up an idea and explores it with some great character work and great world building, and then you're just left to, like, ponder things, if that makes sense. It's also, in this collection in particular, a lot about free will and entropy and what can you control, what is predestined, and what does that mean for you, whether something is proven to be predestined or not. And I love how he thinks, I love how he, like, wordsmiths and all of those things, and I just personally really love thinking about his work. So when people, like, maybe talk negatively about his craft, I get really, like, defensive just because it's like, I really like it. I don't know. It's kind of irrational because obviously all books are subjective. It's art. Like, not everyone's going to like the same thing, but I'm just like, I really like how he thinks. So I don't care if people have, like, 3 or 4 star opinions. It's when people have, like, 1 or 2 star opinions that I'm like, are we reading the same story? Because, like, I really liked that. So I don't know, I learned this recently, that I'm very protective of my love of these short stories. And I don't know, I just reread them recently. I reread the whole collection, and it still holds up. It still consumes me. I still can think about so many things, even now when I know the ending of the stories. So yeah, he's a master for me. I really love his works. If you didn't know, he is the author who wrote the story for the movie Arrival. And I freaking love that movie. That's one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time. I think the last one we'll talk about is specifically the Broken Earth trilogy, but really anything by N.K. Jemisin. Mainly, like, I get when people say that they don't like her writing style. Well, actually, I don't get it. I don't. But, like, I understand as a person who's read a writing style that other people love and don't click with it. Like, I get that experience. I just don't understand that experience in the context of N.K. Jemisin. Obviously, it's a real thing. Lots of people don't connect with it. So no one's, like, in the wrong if that is your opinion and experience. But, like, for me, her words are like butter. Like, I just, like, can read her sentences for hours straight. I think how she crafts a world is fantastic. Her character work is consistent for me to such a high degree. I have a Jemisin guide video, and, like, this is one of the few authors where, like, there is one book that I can tell is a little bit more separate from the rest of her canon in terms of quality of character work, and that's because it was the first one she wrote, sort of thing. And I do talk about that in that video. And I also think it's one of those authors where you really can start anywhere. You just should start with the type of story that will resonate with you. I don't get it when people don't like the Broken Earth trilogy, or when they read the first book and don't love the other two as well. But like the Broken Earth trilogy is like one of the most like masterfully crafted things I have ever consumed. And I don't know, and then when people don't like The City We Became, oh, The City We Became was one of the few things that made me happy last April. One of the few things that brought me joy in April of 2020. So, obviously no author is for everyone. But N.K. Jemisin, like, I love her brain. It's very similar to Ted Chiang, which I love the intention of the wordsmithing. And, like, I always get swept away. I love being in her works. I cannot wait for the next book she publishes. So, yeah, these are the books that I love and tend to ignore / run away from critiques of because it would hurt me too much. Because that's what I do for my mental health. If someone has a rant review about some of my favorite things, I just run the other way. I do not engage. I know some people on the internet choose to engage. If that's... I think it's okay as long as you're respectful. Like, I think it's... If you are the type of person who likes to engage in, like, constructive debate about a piece of media, that's really fun. What I think is, like, less productive is when people just call another person stupid because they didn't like someone else's favorite work. I think that's less productive. That's my opinion. Let me know some of your, like... I kind of get why people don't love this, but this is, like, my favorite thing of all time, and, like, everyone's wrong if they don't love it. You know, like, that kind of irrational passion for books. Let me know those in the comments down below. If you just want to leave me an emoji, leave me Earth for Broken Earth Trilogy, just so I know you're here if you want me to know that. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.